Okay, so this is this says that the city has grown by 48.8%. Surely you don't mean the city.
The city's budget, yes, thank you.
So we know that the population of the city grew by 10%, and the budget of the city grew by almost 50%, and even adjusted for cost of living grew by 30%. Do you see a problem when the growth of the budget is so significantly outstripping the growth of the population?
It's absolutely a challenge for us, for sure. If you look at the number one driver of that is our utilities, the Metro rate. So Metro is going through a huge amount of work on their treatment plants, very expensive work, and that is fully funded by the municipalities. And so that is something that is going to continue to be a driver of our costs over the next several years as they go through that work. So absolutely. The second biggest driver, of course, is wages, with public safety wage growth being even a bigger driver of our costs. So it's something that is not in the city's control. There are arbitration processes, et cetera, that take place, and we are benchmarked to other cities. So that's something that all cities in Canada are really challenged with, because we have such a significant portion of our budget that's people. And so the only way we're not getting additional services for those additional
Except for what was said, though, that we weren't increasing headcount, which is completely counterintuitive from what I have observed over the last decade. What I would have liked to have seen, having put these various motions forward, both on the baseline review and the line item budget, was a year-over-year graph showing increase in budget by department. Now, I know that going back to 2009, which is when you started, was when the core review process was undertaken by the previous city manager. And I know that shifted the structure of the civil service and by department. But notwithstanding, it should still be possible to be able to illustrate how that growth has happened, both in terms of budget and by headcount by department. That's something that I would really still like to see in more detail around this process. Generally, that was one of my largest comments about this, is the way that the graphs were constructed were not really giving us a sense of year-over-year increases so that we could see where those spikes occurred. So I'm concerned that we need to be seeing greater detail even at this level. I'd also like to talk a little bit further about the blending of the budgets between the operating budget and the capital budgets. Of course, the operating budget, this is year to year what the city should be covering, but the capital budgets in particular are a reflection of the plans that are made by the government of the day, or the city council of the day. As we know, we went through a major change in the last election, and this new council needs to be exploring the plans that were put in place. So it seems to me that going forward, we should simultaneously be looking at the underpinnings of those plans to determine whether indeed we want to move forward with them. Because when we look out 5 years, we're assuming that we want to go ahead with the status quo of what was presented previously. So I just want to make sure that that's contemplated, and that's a question to you, if indeed that can be contemplated in our future planning.
I think that would be a good example of one of the pieces of information that we could bring to council on the information sharing of what's in there, ensure that you're aware, and then if you choose to give direction to staff on the capital budget related to that plan, then you could do that at the direction setting session.
The other thing you touched on was scope.
Or just 10 seconds left. Just 10 seconds left.
Okay, well, the other thing is scope creep. I know we identified that we had been downloaded on services by senior levels of government, but I think it's important to also look at where scope creep has happened within our own civil service as well.